Tuesday night. Pepper, Sam Kouvaris talking about the Jaguars, the USA soccer matchup, and we may touch on the Gators here as well today. Chad Henne gets the start, and I think after the game, toward the end of the podcast on Sunday, I mentioned that, Henne and you fleshed it out a little bit because he doesn't have tremendous physical skills, and not saying he's not a great athlete, because one of my favorite things is when people say, the guy's terrible. Do you know how good you have to be to suck in the NFL? I mean, you got to be such a phenomenal athlete, and he is that. But for the lack of the physical skill that we see that he doesn't have, even from a Blaine Gabbert, but certainly he's not a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning or any of the elite quarterbacks. He does things from a professional standpoint that I think could be a very good thing for this team. That I continue to wait for Blaine Gabbert to learn from him and to see it. And I talked about that second down situation, 2nd and 3 down there at the goal line. Henne, drops back, feels pressure from the right, moves to the left a little bit, feels a little more pressure, turns to the left, looks over there. There's two guys, clearly both covered, throws the ball out of bounds, knows his job is to get him to 3rd and goal at the 3. Gabbert would have dropped back, and he did this on a sequence earlier in the game. Dropped back, feels a little pressure, shuffles just a little, looks, hesitates, and gets sacked. And those are the kind of things that in the NFL make a big difference. And that's what the great and the good quarterbacks do. They give their team better opportunities to succeed. And this team right now might be best served with Chad Henne at quarterback.
I don't think there's any doubt that this is a better team with Chad Henne at quarterback. But the question really is, are you willing to look at the long game here if you are Gus Bradley and David Caldwell? Because if you're going to be building towards something, Gabbert is the only one who gives you a real chance, and maybe a minuscule chance, but is the only one who gives you any kind of chance to build towards something. Henne doesn't give you a chance to build towards something. I think, we know what Chad Henne is as a quarterback. If he's your backup quarterback, fine. If he's your starter, he's not going to take you to the playoffs. And ultimately, that's what the Jaguars are looking for. We've had such bad quarterback play for so long that I think we get wrapped up in this, well, is he better? Who's the better one between these two guys? And it's not just about who's better right now. It's about who gives you a chance. Now, if you ask me, is Blaine Gabbert a guy who ultimately is going to take you to the playoffs? I think we've seen enough to say no. But there is a little tiny infinitesimal chance that he has a chance to develop into that. And so obviously Henne's playing based on the injury right now. He'll play start against Oakland, but what happens if Henne has just a pretty good game? What if he goes out there and completes half of his passes and 2 touchdowns, and the Jaguars are competitive and maybe even win? When Gabbert is ready to go, do you immediately go back to Gabbert? I think that's an interesting question, because I think it's going to tell us an awful lot about the mindset of Gus Bradley. And, it's a 4-letter word to say that you're looking to next year in the NFL, because nobody on the team wants you to do that. None of the players want you to do that. They're all concerned about doing as well as they can right now for themselves as much as anything. And fans don't want you to be looking toward next year, because they don't want to endure another 2-14 season. So,
right,
how much backbone for that, how much appetite for that do Gus Bradley and David Caldwell have?
All right, well, 2 things about that. One is that Bradley and Caldwell have that luxury that no other combination has. They don't have to win. They've told Shad Khan they're not going to win, and he's bought into it. So they don't have to win this year. I don't know if that means 2 or 1 or 3 or 5, but they don't have to win. I would say that if they go 0-for, there'd be some pressure on them. There's no question. But they don't have to win. They have that luxury. They really don't have to win next year. They have to show improvement. And I think they have to be competitive in the 3rd year. And most fans have to see that. And I have said many times, Jacksonville does not have bad sports fans when it comes to football. Jacksonville has smart sports fans when it comes to football. People in this town know football, and they know when it's bad. And, it's not like you can say to them that performance on Sunday was some kind of, oh, well, you could see we're building to this and building that. I liked it that Gus said, oh, well, we'll hang our hat on what happened defensively, in the last 9 of the last 10. And that's fine. But Kansas City was just trying to play a field position game and get this thing over with. So, I do agree with that. The other thing is, I've been thinking about this today. You and I have talked a bunch about Gabbert, 16 games, let's see what he can do. He can play himself into that job if he shows improvement, even incrementally, over the year. He can play himself out of that job in 4 games.
Yeah, it's got to be more than the improvement he showed last year over the previous year, though.
Right.
I agree. It's got to be substantial. It's got to be something.
It's got to be that guy that we saw in the preseason, in the one game that he performed. If he's that guy, then he's the guy.
And that's sort of the problem, is that he has shown enough that it's there, or it can be there, or you think it can be there, but he hasn't done it on the field when it's mattered. And is it fair to him to run him out there without Justin Blackmon and then make the call? Probably not.
Okay.
But you don't want.
But it's those things that I talked about early, that little professional things that certain quarterbacks did. David Garrard didn't. David Garrard did. Byron Leftwich didn't. Mark Brunell did. Mm-hmm. I mean, even guys.
And by the way, Garrard, it took him
Steve Berline did.
It took Garrard 4 or 5 years before he did that.
Before he could figure that out. I'll buy that. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think they have 4 or 5 years, on Blaine Gabbert. I think he's got to show it this year, or else, you can cut the tie line on the SS Gabbert and let it sail off to sea somewhere.
Where he can go be a star somewhere else. That's fine.
I don't. If he doesn't show enough here, I just don't. I can't envision him, even in the best scenario, being a star somewhere else.
Well, I agree. He's got to show more.
All right. So this whole point about where they go with the quarterback situation is going to be an interesting one for us to follow, and we'll follow it here as we go.
Let me amend the 4-game comment, because you brought a very good point up about Justin Blackmon and about Mercedes Lewis. So you're right. I mean, you can't make a decision based on that, and I'll acquiesce to that. So 6-8 games, though. I mean, halfway through the season, give him 4 games with those guys. I think that you've got a shot at knowing whether he's the long-term answer. And your point is excellent, that Chad Henne can manage games for you and be an Earl Morrall type. Be a Jeff Hostetler, although Hostetler did play and win in the Super Bowl. But I mean, he can be that type of guy. But he's not that guy that's going to be the dynamic quarterback that's going to win games. And Gabbert has the physical tools to be that, but is yet to show that he's that kind of quarterback.
Can we just put a stake in the ground at London and say, if by the time they go across the pond we haven't seen it, we're probably not?
I like it. I like that. And Cole, you and I talked off air about this trip this week. I mean, they're leaving. They're going to Oakland. The West Coast hasn't been good to them since Mark Brunell was their quarterback. Yep. So, they're going to Oakland. They're staying out there. They're going to Seattle. You can look at it that the Jaguars have never had success out there, and the schedule makers did them no favor by putting them on the West Coast for their second and third game. You can also look at it and say, hey, they gave them the 2 easiest teams on their schedule in the first 2 games of the year, and they laid an egg this week.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Gus Bradley is taking them out there on Friday, going to do the long weekend, and then the long stay. I mean, this is a kind of road trip you usually see for like San Diego when they host the Democratic convention or something in San Diego. This is a major road trip for the Jaguars, and then they've got a major road trip when they go to London. So they're certainly going to be road warriors this year.
Knowing you and I, it's really a shame that we don't have the wherewithal or the current management that we're somehow in Napa Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week.
Tell me about it. I don't know if the interviews would be very good, but
no, they'd be excellent in our minds.
Right.
They'd be brilliant.
You want to touch on college football here a little bit?
Yeah,
so one of the things that I spoke to a group last night, one of the things I said was that when the season began, the storylines were Johnny Manziel and Alabama, and then Could Oregon continue to do this without Chip Kelly? Those are sort of the big three storylines nationally. And Jameis Winston has suddenly changed the storyline of college football season right now, at least for the time being. And I don't expect that he'll have too many struggles against Nevada this weekend in Tallahassee. But, I mean, one guy in one game, in one performance, has suddenly not eliminated some storylines, but he's added himself in as one of the storylines of this season.
I think that's exactly the right thing. He's added himself to the conversation. And in turn, what that does is adds Florida State to the conversation.
Right.
And they have enough talent on that team where they should be, if Jimbo Fisher is coaching them right and getting and maximizing what they're doing, they should in fact be somebody who has a say about what happens in the national championship game. And he's one of them. And here's the one thing I like about him, Cole, in watching him. He is a supreme athlete, as we know. He plays on their baseball team, and we saw him do things, in the outfield that were of high elite athlete character. When he is in the pocket, he is confident in his own athletic ability, no matter what it takes, to avoid whatever's going on and look downfield and get the job done. That doesn't happen with guys who are only quarterbacks. A quarterback who's a real athlete is a whole different animal than a guy who's just a quarterback.
And it was amazing to hear all of the comparisons of his style. Some people are trying to say, hey, this guy, is he Elway-esque? Or is he Donovan McNabb-esque? Is he this guy? Is he that guy? I'm not sure. I don't think he's quite as mobile as Elway was early in his career. At this point, I mean, you mentioned he's an athlete, but he's not a scrambling quarterback. He's a guy who can move a little bit. But he's a guy he's comfortable just standing in the pocket, finding space in there, and delivering the ball. And I'm not sure yet that I have a really good comparison for exactly what he is. But I'll tell you this, if he has anywhere near the kind of performance against Nevada as he had against Pitt, that's going to be a whole game changer. Then on the other hand, you've got Florida, who right now doesn't seem like they have any kind of offensive identity. They know what they want to be. Will Muschamp knows what they want to be. But I don't know if they're willing to do that.
Right.
They could run the ball, and it sounds like they're going to redshirt Kelvin Taylor probably. But, boy, if you had those three guys, Matt Brown and Matt Jones and Kelvin Taylor, wouldn't you feel like you could just be a dominant running team, win the line of scrimmage? Because, and I think Will Muschamp's right in this regard, if you're going to win the SEC, you're going to have to beat Alabama, and that means you're going to have to men in the trenches, and so it's good. That's going to be interesting because if the Gators go through this whole season without really establishing something dynamic on offense, and you can be dynamic running the football, by the way. If they go through the whole season without developing something dynamic, there's going to be some chatter in Gainesville and around the Gator Nation after the season.
Does he redshirt Taylor because he knows his offensive line is kind of average, and he knows that they're going to be better, and that in the years succeeding this that he's going to be there? I think that's a legitimate question. Hey, by the way, didn't Colin Kaepernick go to Nevada?
He did indeed. Yep.
Right. So we'll hear that all week long. That kind of comparison. I mean, is he that? And what is Winston? 18, 19 years old.
Right.
I mean, so once he gets to be 24, 25, maybe he develops and he's got that. You're right, not a big scrambler, but good straight line speed. No question about that. And that the scrambling in the pocket is something obviously that can happen as he develops a feel for it and understands how much faster all these guys are up front than the guys he was playing against in high school.
All right, let's go from one football to the other.
Right. Let me say something real quick about Florida.
Yeah.
And that is, I think if I was a Gator fan, I would just wonder out loud, just if they're any good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's all. I mean, think about defensively, they've got some stars. If Antonio Morrison is their best player, and most of their coaches say that, then he's a guy that we know. We certainly know about him mainly because of his off-field problems in the offseason. But clearly, Purefoy is clearly a good athlete that they're trying to maximize out of and play him in a lot of places. But, you don't hear a lot of those other names that they talk about that are stars And on offense, you mentioned the running backs, Jones and Brown. I mean, these guys are guys that I think could play anywhere, could play at Alabama, could start at any place in the country. But I think their offensive line is above average at best. And Driscoll is a great athlete, but maybe ill-suited for what Will Muschamp is asking him to do, particularly mentally. And somebody said to me today, wouldn't Driscoll have been a star under Urban Meyer in his kind of situation? Probably so. Better suited for that kind of offense. Has the physical tools to run this thing, but you're right. You want to beat Alabama? You got to be a man at some point, and you're going to have to stand there and fight them toe-to-toe.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, let's talk about World Cup soccer. The U.S. wins, and I just got a tweet from somebody that used a screen capture from the broadcast today of fans. Have you seen? I just tweeted this, retweeted this.
Right.
There are Jaguars fans in Columbus wearing Jaguars hats and USA jerseys and holding the scarves
and pulling shirts.
Yeah, the hats are NFL. The shirts are U.S. men's national team. And Mark Frisch, who's the owner of the NASL team, tweeted out today, "Could you imagine this game being played in Jacksonville? I can see it.
Right.
That'd be something to get the."
And when you've got 44,000 showing up for a friendly against Scotland, and not even in a time where where soccer is in people's consciousness, it shows you the way that things can do it. And I mentioned that on Twitter tonight, and some smart aleck writes me like he's the expert. Which that's the one thing about soccer fans. So many of them are so snobby, it's unbelievable. They act like the rest of us have never understood the game. And I never kind of say, well, gee, I was the voice of the T-men in the NASL and played the game for 50 years and all that. But usually one of my Twitter followers comes to my defense. This guy says, well, Everbank Field dimensions don't meet U.S. qualifier qualifications. We know that. Okay, we've talked about that for 20 years. And it's an easy fix. The city has talked about doing that, about changing some of the configuration of the stadium. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, is it going to take money? Yeah. Is it worth it? Yes. There'd have been 80,000 people at the stadium for that game tonight. And that's why I don't understand why U.S. soccer doesn't think that far ahead. And when they see things like 44,000 plus show up for a friendly against Scotland, they need to take another look at what we can do. Because, in America, we have very few opportunities. We're a sports-crazy country. Not as crazy as some, but a sports-crazy country. But we have very few opportunities as broadcasters to use the words "we" and to see all fans get behind one team. The 1980 U.S. hockey team is the last one that I can even remember in my career. So, I mean, this is something that really can happen. And we can do that. And the United States qualifies for the World Cup because Honduras and Panama played to a 2-2 draw. So, how sweet is it that we beat Mexico again 2-0 in Columbus, but we beat Mexico, who has been the dominant force in this hemisphere for 40 years, and it's good. I mean, I don't take any joy in other people's demise, but when as Flair said, you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. and that's exactly what we've done to qualify for the 7th consecutive time. And I think Italy is the only other country, maybe Brazil will as well, to qualify for 7 consecutive World Cups now. I mean, we're clearly an emerging, as Bear Bryant used to say about Florida, don't ever wake those people up, because when they do, they'll get it. Gators did. Hopefully the U.S. is, in terms of soccer, emerging.
Yeah, and I just want to see the soccer continue to emerge in Jacksonville, because I think it's great for the city. It's great for the sports landscape here. And, I'm not an enormous soccer fan. I like soccer, and I like when I see USA across the chest, or I see something else like before, it says USA or Jacks across the chest, I'm in. So,
well, here's the thing.
Develops.
Imagine, and people often wonder, why aren't we better? Imagine if this was our starting 11 in the last 30 years. LeBron James at center mid, Michael Jordan at one striker, Barry Sanders at another, Deion Sanders at left wing, Tim Duncan in goal. I mean, you start thinking about the great athletes in America, American athletes, not foreign athletes who come and play American sports, but truly guys who are American athletes. And if soccer offered the kind of money that as my European friends like to tell me, entertainment sports then our team would be in a whole different stratosphere. And that's what happens in Italy, certainly in Brazil, which rivals. How many people live in Brazil? Is it 300 million like the United States? I mean, it maybe. But you know what I'm saying is that when your best athletes choose that game, then yes, you're going to be a player on the world stage consistently.
198.7 million in Brazil as of 2012.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Google.
Stat boy. All right. Thanks, Cole. Good stuff. We'll update this and we'll promote the Google Hangout coming up a little later in the week before the Jaguars are taking on Oakland, and of course Florida and Georgia are both off this week, and Florida State does play against Nevada, as we mentioned, coming up this Saturday.
And remember, the podcast is available on iTunes now, so go ahead and just easy search for Pepper and Kouvaris, and you'll find it in a hurry. That'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast, and we'll hit you again a little bit later on this week, previewing the Jaguars game in Oakland.